you have the opportunity to impact
Welcome,
your client's
everybody,
life in all aspects. The updated weight loss specialization will help trainers in many ways expand their career.
For the first time, we talk about the psychosocial aspects, the sociocultural.
You're going to be able to truly understand what your clients are going through when they have a specific weight loss journey.
All new information, new trends.
We were able to develop what we called personas.
To provide examples of what you might experience as a fitness professional when you encounter a client.
And build confidence as the months go by.
I'll feel more comfortable in my skin.
My self-confidence will improve.
Empathy is something that runs through the weight loss specialization.
It's about guiding people.
Regarding nutrition, regarding exercise.
I can go to bed at night knowing that I've done something good for the world.
It's great content and a blueprint for how to get results with your clients.
We put together a complete solution to help you, the professional, become the next weight loss specialist.
I'm Brad Dieter.
Ken Miller.
Casey DeYoung.
Wendy Batts.
Nolan Highland.
Mike Fantagrassi.
Welcome to NASM's Weight Loss Specialization course.
All right, let's get this going. All right, welcome everybody to Random Fit, and you're with, sorry about that. You're with Ken Miller. You're with Random Fit. You're with Ken Miller and my friend and instructor, Miss Wendy Batts. Wendy, how are you?
I'm great, Ken. How are you?
I am awesome. Now that we're going, we have with a couple hiccups this morning. I think we're ready to rock and roll. So you
Absolutely.
know, that's kind of the little off-screen stuff here. I mean, it's kind of like, you ever do double dutch with jump rope with the two ropes, and you're kind of wondering when to jump in, when to kind of not jump in. I kind of feel like that's where we've been this morning, as far as, okay, do we start? Do we not start? Anyway, all the things that go with a podcast. Well, thank you guys for joining us here at Random Fit, powered by the National Academy of Sports Medicine. And I firmly believe that you, if you're here with us today on this topic of using percussion tools or percussion-based massage tools, as far as giving your body some relief, decreasing tension, just overall trying to feel better. If that's what you've used in the past or have had some interest in making that investment or actually using it, you're going to love what we have to talk about today, because you know, this is one of those things where over the last 3-4 years has just exploded on the fitness and recovery market. Wouldn't you say, Wendy?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. So and yeah, go ahead.
And now I was just going to say, you know, it's crazy because, you know, now we see it more often. However, you know, I've been using percussion therapy since basically 1999 with one of the very first ones that I know we're going to talk about. It was called the Deep Muscle Stimulator. It's a DMS. And so, and I literally still use mine today. I mean, I do have some of the ones that are on the market now that are portable and lighter and quieter. However, you know, there was so much benefit when I used it with our athletes and our clients on the recovery standpoint, and especially people that were straight out of, you know, surgery. We were working at it to help break up scar tissue and realign the tissue. I mean, I thought, you know, then that, wow, this is great. And every time I used it, people were like, what is that thing? Because it does look like a small little like jackhammer, and it's stainless steel. It's super heavy. You have to plug it in. But I still love it because it does kind of offer a little something different that, you know, in comparison is still different to some of the other tools that are out there, even though it's still at the same, you know, when you look at kind of the benefits, it's still providing the same benefits as some of the ones that you see that now people are buying to have in their home and using it on themselves.
Yeah, I remember my first exposure to the DMS and the Deep Muscle Stimulator, as its full name is, and it was a giveaway at the one of the first NASM or National Academy of Sports Medicine conferences. This was 2004, 2005. And I knew the guy who won it, and man, he took that thing out and he was just using it on everybody, and everybody just walked away. You know, it's like when you put this thing on your thigh or your hamstrings, it kind of shocks you a little bit because, you know, you're getting typically what's an overactive and sensitive area. the second you stand up, everybody's just going like, you know, they're lifting their legs, they're doing these, you know, straight leg kicks, and like, oh man, that is just amazing. And that was my first exposure to it back in, you know, the mid 2004, 2005 is when I first had that exposure. But yeah, that's one tool and company that's you know, has stood the test of time when it comes to what it does, because it's still around, amazingly enough. And as if you're still using yours, and I know how much you use tools to help you do what you do on your clients, especially since you've got some big bodies that you work on, and for a tool like that to actually still be alive and operating and doing what it's supposed to do, then that's a big testament to that particular tool's endurance.
Yeah, I remember when I was working at a physical therapy clinic, and when they first brought it out, they were going through and they were just making sure that we were very comfortable with the anatomy. And of course, at the time, we were working on baseball pitchers who were doing Tommy John recovery, and they were like, "We want you to, you know, go." You know, granted, obviously there were no open wounds. You know, they were cleared for that type of, you know, vibration therapy or percussion therapy at the time. But they were like, whatever you do, don't hit any of the bony processes because you could possibly chip the bone. And I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm sorry, what? You know, I mean, granted, I felt very comfortable with my anatomy, but that's a little bit scary when you're working on, you know, baseball pitchers that are worth millions of dollars. It's like, okay, no stress, don't move. And if they jump, you have to be very careful. So I learned very quickly my own hand placement to make sure that I hit exactly the areas I really wanted to focus on at the time. So when you think about that, you know, and again, that was in 1999, and you think about that, and it wasn't something that was like brand new, but it was new to me. And then of course, where we are today, that if, you know, with some of the tools that we're going to talk about, I mean, if you do kind of hit a bone, it's like, oh, that really doesn't feel great, but, you know, but you're not going to chip anything.
Right.
You know, we really have come a long way. Plus, you know, I think it always is important, you know, to have a purpose behind when we do talk about some of this, you know, like, you know, when I ask you, you know, we're talking about percussion therapy. So if I said to you, what is percussion therapy? You know, we're talking about these tools already, but what is it for some of our listeners who maybe have seen it on the market but aren't really sure what it does and the purpose of it?
Well, that's a great point, because whenever I would take out my percussion tool, whether it's the Volt Plus or the Go, clients will usually ask, especially if it's their first time, it's like, what is it and what does it does? And it helps kind of clarify things, because anything with a button that starts to make a little bit of noise, you're like, okay, what's this thing supposed to do? And you mentioned the word jackhammer so earlier, but when we talk about what it is, I mean, think of it like just a little miniature jackhammer. So it's not breaking up cement blocks or anything like that. But if we look at its purpose with that oscillation, okay, so as the percussion and you have the displacement, or what they'll call, you know, just amplitude, the amount of percussion or the travel of the applicator, which is the point of the percussion massage tool, that's going to be oscillating and doing a little bit of a jackhammer job on whatever body part that you're working on. You have the percussion on top of pressure. So in this case, it's the manual pressure that's going to go ahead and provide that relief of tension, as well as offer a little bit of change in fluid viscosity in the tissue. So with the percussion plus the pressure that you're going to manually apply to the body, whether that is you as a personal trainer or a body worker, or if you're using it from a self-care standpoint where you're applying the pressure to your own self, what we're going to do there is apply pressure. And just like with that discussion we had on foam rolling or self-myofascial technique, it's not all that different, to where with the machine, we'll apply the pressure, sustain that pressure with that percussion, and that's going to help change tissue density, help with fluid viscosity, meaning we're going to allow the fluid, whether, you know, blood, lymph, whatever is under the percussion tool, it's going to allow better blood flow, better lymph flow. And overall, the research also supports that it's also going to affect pain reception. So your interpretation of what could be painful or tender is going to be changed based on the percussion as well. So overall, like you said, Wendy, it's just like a little bit of a jackhammer, but with pressure and that percussive, the displacement of the surface area on you is going to help how the body basically functions.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, and the beauty of it too, you know, when we talk about, you know, obviously you kind of talked about what it was, but when you think about the benefits that it can have, you know, to a client, because again, you know, you can use, you know, percussion with, you know, as a warm up, and it helps kind of, you know, activate muscles, stimulate muscles to get them prepared for the workout. It can also increase activity to lengthen muscles that, you know, like when you do your overhead squat or you do your assessment, if you put it at a higher speed on a preparation standpoint, that can actually help activate some muscles that have been underactive as well. I mean, granted, you want to put it in a process, and we'll talk about the importance of making sure that it's an all-around process. But, you know, I think when I kind of researched and looked into it so much on the recovery standpoint, I mean, I was absolutely amazed. There was a really good article that was in the Journal of Sports Medicine that was in 2020. So I mean, very, very recent. And Conrad, as well as, you know, the other authors that were in this, I mean, they did a 5-minute treatment on the calf complex, and they were looking at, you know, torque, if there was a change in torque as well as a change of increase in range of motion. And they ended up finding out that there was an increase of range of motion by just doing the medial as well as the lateral side, just going up and down, you know, the entire tissue. And it did not decrease torque or anything like that. So on a standpoint on range of motion, and you look at, you know, what it can benefit when you're looking at, you know, targeting certain areas that have been shown to be overactive to try to help, you know, kind of restructure the overactive tissue to try to help increase the range of motion to its ideal length. I think all of it, you know, there's so many benefits to the muscles in general that that if you haven't used it on yourself or used it with a client, I think it's very, very beneficial. Plus, it's going to help. It can also help increase your offerings. At the end of the day, you know, most of us are trainers that are out there. We're trying to find a way to, you know, expand our business and grow our business. And, you know, we have clients that come into our facility that for literally 30 or an hour that just want, you know, percussion therapy done to them along with different types of stretching because it just feels good.
Yep. And to put your business hat on, again, going over what it is and how it works. Yeah, because it is so different from anything out there that a personal trainer in this example can offer. You know, you do some body work, meaning you're using the percussion tool on your client, maybe assist them with some stretching or flexibility techniques, and then put them into a compression boot like the Normatec. And that's something that, you know, from a business standpoint, I've had to expand some of the services I've offered, especially in this day and time where you have to kind of diversify some of your offerings, because, you know, there is a market for it, especially since you have these athletes that do incur repetitive stress injuries, like with runners and swimmers and cyclists. Well, if they're going to constantly overload the tissue, there's a constant search for how do you unload the tissue, and offering something like you mentioned, a 20-30 minute percussion session, and then help them improve circulation further by implementing something like a compression boot, whether it's the legs or the arms or the hips. But overall, once you've done what you could do as far as improving mobility, like you mentioned with that research article, improving range of motion and flexibility, now one of the benefits is to help improve circulation along with that. And we'll talk about some techniques that can be applied. But again, to put on the business hat, you know, that is something that some trainers are taking advantage of. You know, if somebody doesn't want to work out and personal training, they just want to feel better and deload and take some stress off of, you know, typically tight areas like their traps, upper traps, or their hip flexors, or maybe even like that research article reviewed was, you know, where we tend to hold a lot of tension but don't realize it in the calf complex. Then, you know, you can do just as much service by offering some kind of formatted service that's catered towards tension relief.
Well, absolutely. And there are more and more articles that, people are now, because this is, and it's not a fad. I mean, I think it's here to stay because of the benefits. But, when you're going through, for me,
Yeah.
I want to know the research before I start applying it, or I want to understand the purpose of it. And, when you're looking at not just the increases of range of motion that people are finding by just doing even something as small as a 5-minute session, I think it's also important to talk about, on a recovery standpoint. I mean, it helps increase, like you said, circulation. It's helping, decrease DOMS. I didn't know that they did another article or another research article that's out there. We're talking about, how they had a certain, group that utilized percussion therapy after, their workout. And then they had a control group, obviously, that just did stretching. And there was another one that did some foam rolling. And when you compare all three, they actually were able to withstand better and longer range of motion, as well as decrease, muscle soreness long term for up to 72 hours. And I think, when you think about that, if you have a really good session after you have a really hard workout, just the recovery time, we talked about Normatec boots and how that also increases, the chances for you to get back on there and play at a high performance. But if you don't want to invest in boots and you're looking for, like, it's something that's easy, portable, things that you can do even on yourself as well as your clients. I mean, I think there's so many positives that people are going to gain, as long as, and again, I think it's important when we talk about this too, there's always contraindications that you want to keep in mind. So, I mean, I don't know if you want to go through some of the ones that you found when we kind of start dealing with that.
Yeah, I mean, and some of them are obvious, right? And when we talk about just disease, when we talk about, cancer cells, if someone's just overall, if someone's under the care of a physician for whatever the physical situation may be, we always want to refer back to the physician. And anything that you do, really, from a physical standpoint, whether you're working them out or using a tool like, say, the Hypervolt in this case. So cancer winds up being one of those things that we do need to have some guidance from the physician. Anytime when you have some kind of implant, especially with the upper body, so with, and we don't hear about this too often, but implants of the eyes, the teeth, breast implants, things like that, things that can be jarred or might be affected by vibration in that general area. Anything around the reproductive organs, if you have a pacemaker or prosthetics, I have clients that have screws and plates in certain areas. So those are the things that might be a little extra sensitive to vibration. So you definitely want, again, revert back to your health and medical history. And if anything, even though you've worked with a client for a long, long time, whenever you're implementing a new tool or new technology, these are things we want to be aware of. Couple other things here, females pregnancy. Again, those are the things that we want to look at. Now with pregnancy, if a client has already been using it and then they get pregnant, you're not introducing anything new, but again, we'll leave that up to them, or again, refer to their OBGYN. And of course, things like open wounds, some of the obvious stuff, we don't want to go on any cuts and wounds, get a little messy. We don't want that. Fractures, stress fractures, we want to stay away from those as well. But again, overall, we want to make sure that we consult any kind of health and medical professional whose licensing or certification definitely is above that of a personal trainer. So anything medical you have, if there's any doubt, refer out, is what we like to say.
Absolutely. And another thing I think that's important to point out, like the very first time you ever have a client that is on your table, I always say, hey, we're going to use this product, whether it's a Volt, a Theragun, a DMS, something like that. And I actually have them open up their palm and I kind of place it in their palm so they know what to expect. And then I'm just going to tell them in some of the areas that I found that I think are going to, would be that would be very beneficial to use it on those certain areas. I'm going to apply this. However, if it's too much or you need a break, please let me know. But you'll notice at the first session, more clients are jumping around, they're really tensed up, and I don't want any surprises, and that's why I do that. And I found that, my clients appreciate that. So if I'm like, okay, now I'm going to put this vibration tool on you or this percussion tool on you, let me know how it feels, and they don't know what to expect. Sometimes that can also cause them to jump. But I've noticed that, especially on areas that are very overactive, very sensitive, I put it on the lowest setting if there's a setting option, because with new clients, you want to start easy, and apply light pressure just so they can kind of get used to it, because it's very beneficial for the lymphatic system anyway. So it's not like you have to apply a lot of pressure or anything like that. And it's more of just getting their body accustomed to it. The pain receptors kind of know what to expect. And you'll notice that if you can kind of treat the first session as kind of an introductory session, utilizing that. I'm not saying don't charge for it, but I'm just saying, add it along with your other services just for a few minutes, so they can get a good feel of like how great they feel afterwards, but then they also know what to expect. Then the next time you use the tool on them, they are more receptive and their body is more, it actually allows you to do it. And so they really start to get the benefits from what I've seen personally, utilizing it after the second session and beyond.
Yeah, and that's a great technique. I forgot about that. Use the palm first. It's very you're not getting on anywhere that's going to be particularly tender. Like, say, if you get straight onto the hamstring and that's their first intro. Hello. That'll wake somebody up.
Exactly.
But one of the things that I'll also do is I'll put the Volt in their hand, and I'll let them run it up and down their forearms and biceps, so they have direct control on how much pressure that they apply. So whether it's light or heavy, then they can kind of manipulate that as well. So I'll put it in their hand, and here's where you adjust the speeds. Here's a pressure sensor, and that'll help you, get an understanding of how much pressure that you're putting into or not putting into your bicep or your forearm. And I'll let them play with that, and that way, they have control. And for some reason, it's kind of like, you can't tickle yourself. Like if you were, try to tickle your feet or trying to tickle yourself, you can't really tickle yourself. So it's almost like I put the Volt in their hand, and they're not going to put themselves into spasm, or they're not going to, jump up off the table on their own. So those are two techniques that I like to use. One, use the palm, like you just mentioned, and which is perfect. And then two is let them see how easy it is to use on themselves. Because if it's a situation where they've made the investment and they have one, and they don't know exactly how to use it, this is one way that you're going to empower your client on how to administer, some kind of self-care strategy.
Absolutely. And of course, I know that you're a manual therapist as well. And of course, when you go to manual therapy school, one of the things that they tell you, even when you're applying manual therapy to someone, look at how their body's reacting, because the pain receptors in people's bodies react totally different. Some people laugh, like you'll notice if you've ever gotten a deep tissue massage and all of a sudden people start dying laughing. That's actually the pain, like a pain receptor, but that's how their body is reacting to it. Or if someone gets, the chill bumps. That's another way of looking at it, or obviously if they're squirming around saying, oh my gosh, this is crazy and it's painful. I mean, that's obviously another one. So, I mean, I think it's just, being very observant when you're using it, being careful with, your speed choices, obviously making sure that you have a plan, that you're not just, going in and doing it. And, I think that's kind of where it could bring us into the next conversation. That is also important, that we talked about the DMS. The DMS is one speed, and it is a stainless steel piece of equipment, and and you plug it in, and it's extremely, extremely heavy. But there are so many other products, like you said, in the last 4 years that have come out to the market where multiple clients are now purchasing it, because the DMS can run anywhere from like $2,800 or more. So it is a no joke, expensive, piece. I know Hyperice had the Raptor that was also pretty expensive, but it was kind of mimicking the DMS, but it was not stainless steel, and it was definitely lighter, but it was very pricey as well. So they've actually, Hyperice, as well as, Therabody. So they have the Theragun. There's the Tim Tam. There's so many now that are portable. They're lighter, but they also have different speeds and different, like heads on them. So basically, like you were calling them earlier, the different, I always call them gadgets, but basically accessory tool attachments, if you will. So I don't know if you want to run through some of those, and then, I'll tell you the ones that I like as well and I use more often, or there's one in particular people love, but I have a really hard time using it. And I'll tell you why. So why don't you ramble off the ones that you like?
I will ramble, and I'll actually show for those that are watching this right now. So here I have, just as an example, we have the Volt Go, and this is the sample of the flathead, right? So generally this is your general use applicator, good for big muscle groups. So, thighs, quads, calves, biceps, big muscular areas that you're not going to worry about hitting too many bony landmarks. Another one, and I'm just going to pull this one just because it already has the applicator. So we have the cushion. Now this is a utility one as well, like the flathead, but here the cool thing is it acts like a little shock absorber. So if I am on any kind of bony landmark or close to anything, like, so if I'm on near the collarbone or the shoulder, like if I'm on my near my AC joint or even my elbows, this is the one actually I'll have my clients get used to it if they're doing this from a self-care standpoint, because I don't have to worry about them running over their elbow. You talk about your olecranon process, like what you mentioned with when you're working with baseball players and using the big DMS. Well, with that big hard surface, yeah, you get to worry about chipping some bones. But here with the cushion, I don't have to worry about the client hurting themselves at all. Another applicator, which you would also interchange with whatever tool that you've got. And again, with all those brands that you mentioned, Wendy, with the Tim Tam, the Theragun, the DMS only had its initial applicator, but a lot of these that are out there on the market now have different applicators for different uses. And I've just started running those off to you now. You have another general use one, which is the ball. It's round, so no blunt or no hard edges or anything like that. Again, good for big surfaces. And you have the bullet, which is basically more like a thumb. I don't have any right in here in front of me right now, but it's more for like precise areas that you want to get. So if you're using, let's say, the palm of your hand, the bottom of your feet, the forearms, where you have like thinner, smaller muscles that you can get into. And then you have the fork, which is basically, it's a two-pronged applicator, which now can work on both sides. So if you're going up and down the spine, like up the paraspinals, you can get both of them at the same time, because you've got the two protrusions with a rounded end that can help out. And yeah, and one of the interesting things that I found when kind of researching different products out there is that the Tim Tam brand actually has a heated ball. So if you wanted to get some heat along with your percussion session, they have an adapter that helps it accommodate both Hyperice as well as Therabody. So outside of that, I'm not sure. But you have a lot of selection out there on how you can apply this pressure to your body based on the shape of the applicator. And more importantly, that's supposed to serve the purpose of figuring out, okay, well, what's your goal as someone who's performing self-care, or as a practitioner who is working onto a body. So I don't like to interchange applicators too often, so I'll usually go with the flathead or the cushion depending on what I'm doing. So what's one of your go-to applicators there, Wendy?
So I usually use the flathead as well. I think that's probably my go-to. Now, granted, if I am being more specific and I need to do something with like the erectors, I do find the fork to be very beneficial, especially if I'm going up, into the upper traps, where I really don't want the upper traps to be the major target. That I really want to get the ones that hug the spine. I think that one's great. Again, I don't use that one as much. However, I do. That is something that's kind of different that I would change it out for. The one that I started out with, that I thought was going to be the one that I used all the time, was the ball. And I thought this thing is going to rock, because again, there's no sides to it. Like you said, it's going to be more forgiving, and however, what I found out personally is, because obviously I'm working on my clients, they're fully clothed, is that the drag, like you couldn't like easily do someone's, piriformis or something very easily, depending on their shorts or their shirt, if you're doing different muscles, because it doesn't easily drag unless you would hold the shirt and then run it over. And so I found that to be very beneficial for people that were super sensitive on the calves or where their skin was exposed. However, when I was working through clothing, I had to end up changing it out because I'm like, you know what, this isn't working for me. I also am a big fan of the cushion one as well. Again, I feel like it's very forgiving too, and and more clients can handle that, because I think we have to keep thinking about what's in the best interest for the client. And the bigger the flat head is, because there's usually two different sizes. Some are big. There's one that's a little bit bigger than the one that's smaller. The bigger the area, again, the more I don't want to say weight distribution, because it's not that, but it's going to target a wider surface. So sometimes people can handle that a little bit easier than like you said, the bullet or something that's definitely more pinpoint. That's going to just kind of go into one area. But yeah, that usually surprises more people when I'm like, you know what, the ball is one that I don't use very often. And I thought for sure when I first looked at it, that's going to be the one that I'm going to love the most. Well,
I've got a holiday gift idea then for you, because here's an update, because the ball has been, I guess, reformatted.
Right. So now it doesn't drag, right? Yes.
Yeah, it's more of a plasticky surface, and not more of the foam. So it actually runs really good, like over material. So I'm wearing this little cotton top right here. So it'll run over that material actually really smooth. But the biggest thing for me is that it's easy to clean.
Yes.
Definitely easier to clean. In this day and age, you have to clean everything, all the way from the handle all the way up to the body and the applicator. So the change in texture definitely helps out, like you're saying, in use, right? It doesn't drag clothing with you, but it's also a lot easier to clean from that vantage point. So,
well, it's interesting you said that, because we literally just 2 days ago got the new accessory. Because I'm like, all right, we ended up purchasing another percussion gun, if you will, and we're excited about it. And I was like, you know what, I want to not always have to carry all these with me. So now I can, it's just in this little easy bag. I throw it in there, and then I, take it and go. So, but I think that's also one of the things that you're going to have to find the one that best suits you, because again, there are so many different companies, and obviously we have the ones that we use a little bit more because we're partnered with them and we have a really good relationship, and their products are phenomenal. However, the one thing, again, we keep going back to the DMS, but when we talk about old school and where we started with some of this stuff, you had to plug it in. It was super, super heavy. You couldn't easily take it with you on the plane because they thought it was a weapon because of how heavy it was. Plus, it would get really hot after a while because it was stainless steel. And that was one thing. And, when I would do, let's say, an event out, I did some golf events, and I would take that with me. If I was using it on a bunch of golfers that were coming before or after recovery, and I constantly had that thing going, not only did it get hot, but I mean, I got, it was really, really heavy and really hard on my body long term.
Right.
Again, I'm not dissing the product because I loved it and I still use mine. However, you want to keep that in mind, because I think if we talk about, like, for example, if we bring in Hyper Ice, if you use their Volt Plus, it's about 3 pounds. Their Volt itself is like 2.5, and then I think the Go is just like 1.5. And so when you think about, if you're going to be using this like throughout the day, what's going to be good for you and your ability to do stuff. Plus, now because they're cordless, they're easy to use anywhere, anytime. And I think, some are Bluetooth, some aren't. There are things that you want to look at, and based on what you're doing and the clientele that you're working with and where you're going to be working, you want to keep all that in consideration, along, of course, with the price.
Yeah. So there are a lot of feature benefits, and again, when you do your research on which product line is going to be best for you, there are definitely a lot of choices. So we talked about the different applicators. So depending on how you intend to use it as a practitioner, or how you intend to use it from a general consumer standpoint for self-care, you want to know not just what different applicators or capabilities that your percussion tool has, but you want to look at battery life. There have been times when I've been on the baseball field, or I've been traveling and I don't have a power source, and I know I'm going to be on the road for over 7 hours, and that's where I'll have to take advantage of a long battery life, as well as have the capability of having interchangeable batteries if I need it. So if I've got in this case, 1 volt, but I've got multiple players that I'm just going to be working on, then I might bring a battery, an extra battery that I can interchange. Or if I know, okay, well, I'm going to be out there for at least an hour and a half, then I need to have some confidence that despite how I use it, like if I'm using the higher frequency, or it's just going to get 0 rest in between players, minus cleaning, of course, then I need to know that the battery life is going to be able to withstand it. But the one thing that we haven't really talked about is the sound. So for people like us who travel quite a bit, and the last thing I want to do is be in my hotel room, and then my hotel room neighbor is like thinking, what's that motorized sound going on next door? What's this guy doing? So having something that's quiet, and again, you mentioned Hyperice, which has the quiet glide technology, which makes it one of the more quieter ones in the industry or available right now for consumer use. Sound plays a big role to where I've been able to use it while I'm on the plane. And if it's a long flight, let's say from here to Georgia or Atlanta, and you're on the plane for 5.5+ hours, thighs start to get a little tight, my shoulders start to get a little tight, and why wait to get some relief when I can actually get that relief, and reduce that tension while I'm in transit, and not just have to wait till I have a floor to lay down on and do some stretches. So sound. Sound is
and I think that's a super big one, because I mean, I know, Theragun at one point when they first came out, their product was phenomenal, with the exception of it was very, very loud. And I know that they've updated it. If we look at just the Theragun, we keep talking about the volts and stuff, but I mean, the Theragun, one thing that's a little bit different in comparison to the Tim Tam and the volts is the way that you can hold on to it, because it does have like an adjustable, like when you're, I don't even know what you call it, but basically where the heads go, the handle is kind of, you can adjust it to where it's a little, you can get into some areas that are really hard to do when you've got a straight base. And so, I like that it's adjustable. It is more quiet. I still think that the Volt's a little quieter. But that's one thing that's a little bit different too. And another consideration, again, we're trying to kind of let you know what's out there, and then we want you guys to choose the one that you guys feel is the best. And and I hate to say this, but we personally have them all, because I like to try them out. I want to know the difference, and I want to see, is there one that's going to be better than the other? And of course, I do have my favorites, but they are pricey, and so it is definitely an investment. Now, granted, this is what I do for a living, so to me, it is worth the investment. And and I do have other trainers that I work alongside of, where I don't expect them to also purchase their own if they're working with me on an event. So I feel that it's very important. And of course, we're all different, but that kind of brings us to some of the prices. And again, we kind of talked about this. But when you're looking at, again, the DMS, you're looking at like $2,800. If you're looking at the Raptor, again, the Raptor is almost kind of like the DMS, but more not stainless steel. And I mean, I don't remember how much was that one. I mean, we're looking in
Raptor was $3,500 when they still had it. So that's a discontinued product now. So it's no longer being offered, but I still have mine. So that was, I'm not gonna let go of that for what I paid for it, but it still works and still viable, and still, still definitely 100% applicable. So when we talk about prices, the one word of caution that I'll share with everybody is that you want to watch out for anything that's sub $100, because if you look at the bigger name brands, like what we mentioned, Hyperice, Hypervolt, the Therabody or the Theragun, the Tim Tam, just to name a few of the things that are out there right now. Anything, there's a lot of knockoffs. So as soon as these handhelds started hitting the market, there was a lot of knockoffs. And what I heard a lot of, and I'm sure you've heard the same thing, Wendy, is like, I bought one for $110 and this thing lasted 2 hours, right? So, you can imagine what customer service is going to be like for these knockoffs as well. So you want to stick with the bigger name brands out there. But like you, I do have my favorites, and you'll see, some of the I would say the lower model, or the more travel friendly models, which are going to be the lower price point, around $200. But you're going to find your heavier hitters getting up into more of the $350 to $600 range. So if price is a concern, as it is for a lot of people, looking at what's going to give you the most bang for your buck when it comes to the amount of investment that you're going to make. So you're looking at power, so it's speed, the amount of displacement or amplitude, which can go anywhere between 10, 12, 14, 16 millimeters, depending on the product. So that's just the amount of travel that the applicator, so that little jackhammer effect, that's the amount of travel that we're talking about. So, best case scenario, somebody has a chance to kind of feel the different applicators, feel the different speeds. And that way you can make a, more educated decision on how you're going to spend your money, because every body is different, and how every person perceives the benefit, or how much tension it relieves from you, is going to be truly individualized. So ideally, everybody has a chance, like you and I have, Wendy. We go to conferences and conventions, and so we have a chance to get hands-on experience on a lot of these things firsthand from each one of the products. And like you said, we all have our favorites, but if you can figure out, okay, which applicator is going to best serve your purpose and your goal, and how much speed and how much pressure it's going to take for you to feel the relief and the benefits of using percussion massage, you're going to be that much better for it.
Absolutely. And again, when you're looking at some of the wattages, if you're working on, a lot of players, like professional athletes, and they're very thick, that's going to play that's going to be important on, what do you think is going to be the best one for you too. And so, you always want to keep that in mind, because if we think about Hyperice, I think the Plus is 90 watts, and then it's 60 for the Volt, and I think if I read it correctly, 40 for the new Go that they have. And so obviously the goal isn't intended to be working on the biggest muscles and the deepest tissues. It's more of a travel to work on, like traps, or things that are easily accessible, smaller muscle groups, but when you're truly on the go. So you want to look at that, or like if we're thinking about the Theragun or the Mini, it's the same type of thing. There are a lot of different products out there, and we're not trying to confuse anyone. We're really trying to educate you guys that at the end of the day, percussion therapy, it's stimulating both the superficial as well as the deep muscle fibers. They're really there to increase the circulation, reoxygenize the tissues, help decrease muscle soreness. And again, we're looking at like tissue regeneration. We want to fully be able to prepare the body, as well as provide good recovery for the body. But when we're talking about this, that I personally feel like this is a component of it. That the warm up and the cool down, yes, it's super important for the muscles to be able to warm up correctly as well as cool down correctly. But to me, I think that if you're really targeting the overactive muscles, and you're going through slow and controlled, you hold those tender areas for about 20 to 30 seconds, just like if you would with a roller. What I'll do, I'll do a couple passes, find those areas, kind of sit on it. Then I work on doing like a pin and stretch at that point, again, to try to, elongate the overactive tissues. Then I do a static stretch, and then I go into actual like muscle activation, not necessarily with percussion therapy, but I think if I do that, and then I do the workout, and then I go through and slow and controlled and do the same thing and static stretch again, I have seen such huge benefits on long-term, muscle imbalances that have been corrective, proper movement patterns. They feel better. They're moving better. They're going to perform better. So to me, it really is all inclusive. And I think that's very important to keep in mind. This is an important component of it. But as Rick Ritchie always says, a whole lot of something's better than a whole lot of nothing. So, you do a combination of this, I think you're really going to benefit long-term. And I love percussion therapy, and now that they're providing so much positive research, it's definitely something that I'm going to have in my toolbox for as long as they make them, and as long as mine keep working.
Yeah. And, just to kind of wrap it up a little bit here, one of our associates, Lenny Parasino, one of the things that he's talked about is what we call, what he calls tissue hygiene. So just like we talk about with dental hygiene, like you would floss and brush your teeth once, twice a day. Hey, why not pay the same level of attention to your body, right? So if we take care of our tissues will take care of us in the long run. So when it comes to keeping that blood flow and lymph flow and making sure all our fluids are flowing through our body as they should, uninterrupted, percussion therapy definitely does add that bit to it. So, but great description on application, Wendy. So with that said, that is a lot of information. This time has just flown by, man. So, but Wendy, it's always good seeing you. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise and knowledge about percussion therapy. But for all of you out there, thanks for hanging in with us for this topic on percussion therapy. If you like what you listen to and look forward to more information on the different topics that we'll be discussing in the future, like, follow, and share, and subscribe. Please spread the word on how Random Fit can help you guys. So thanks for spending time with us. Thank you, Wendy, and we'll see you all soon.